Welcome everyone. This is the third video on ratio and proportion. Today we are going to start proportion. Yeah. What is a proportion? The definition says an equality of two ratios is called proportion. So if two ratios are equal, for example, you can see here. So four non-zero quantities A, B, C, D are said to be in proportion if and only if look here one more time, A is to B is equals to C is to D. That would mean if I can compare two ratios, then if we can equate two ratios, then it is called a proportion. Let me show you an example. Maybe for example 2 by 4, if you cancel it, the ratio is half. And let's say 3 by 6, what is the ratio? Half. That therefore I can say 2 is to 4 is same as 3 is to 6. So this is a proportion. Okay, so if we see here, this is in the definition we have generalized it. We have said anything that is A, B, C, D will be in proportion if they can be written in this format here. Let me show you in this format here. A is to B equals to C is to D. That can be better written as, if you can see here, A by B equals to C by D, because proportion ratio means you can divide. Or you can also say A is to B, this is known as is, or is as, you can read it. So how to read this? A is to B as is, C is to D. Okay, so that's how we write. So proportion is nothing difficult, but it is simply when you equate two ratios, when you say that two ratios are equal, then it is called a proportion. Okay, but this is a normal proportion here. Okay, so what happens in a normal proportion? If you see carefully, there will be four quantities required here. How many quantities? Four quantities: A, B, C and D. Okay, so in this definition, A is called, what is A called, everyone? The first letter A is called the first proportional. Okay, what is it called? The first proportional. Whereas D is called the fourth proportional. Why? Because there are four quantities. You can see here 1, 2, 3 and 4. Here 1, 2, 3 and 4 quantities. A is the first one, D is the fourth one. Okay, so A is called the first proportional, whereas D is called what proportional, everyone? Fourth proportional. Is that clear? Okay, but there is another type of proportion. There is something very special here. Okay, let me highlight and show it to you. There is another special proportion which is known as continued proportion. See the name itself, continued. Something has to continue. So for continued proportion, a general definition would be many things like A, B, C, D, E, F are said to be in continued proportion if, look at this special one, if A by B equals to B by C equals to C by D equals to D by E. Can you see it here? Okay, and it goes on and on and on. Okay, look at it carefully. Okay, let me revert it. So did you see that here B is repeating itself? Look at this four quantities here. A by B equals to B by C. B is repeating, the red ones here. Okay, as well as C is repeating here. C is repeating. The second term always repeats. So when you repeatedly repeat the middle term, when you continuously repeat the middle term, then it is said to be a continued proportion. Let me show you an example here. Like if you can say, like let's say A by B equals to, again repeat B by C, again repeat C by D, again repeat D by E. If you have this, look at here, this is repeating here, repeating here, repeating. If you can write like this, then this proportion is called continued proportion. Whereas the normal one would look like this: A, B, C, D, E, F, no repetition. See here, there is no repetition here. It goes on and on and on. Okay, whereas in continued proportion, A, B, whatever you write here, again B, C, whatever you write here, again C, D and etc. Got it? Let's come to the definition again. So in particular, have a look. In particular, A, B, C are said to be in continued proportion if and only if A by B equals to B by C. So only for four things or three things we can write it like this. So did you see that only three things three quantities is required for continued proportion. So minimum how many quantities? Three quantities. Just A, B, C can also make a proportion. Here in the previous definition, how many quantities were here? Here for four quantities, A, B, C and D. But down here, if you come here, you have only A, B and C. So you know that only three quantities can also form a proportion. Let me show you here. So first A, B, C, D. How do you write it? A by B equals to C by D. No repetition here. No repetition. Whereas only A, B, C, if you have only three quantities also, you can make a proportion. How? A by B equals to B by C. Repeat. So this is called continued proportion, and this is a normal one. This is a normal proportion. Is that clear? Now finally let's come to the last few lines here. Here A is called, what is this A called? The first one here, A is called the first proportional. A is called the first one. As you know, in the previous one also it was called first one. But there are only three quantities here. So C is called what here? C is called the third proportional. So we no longer have here A is called the first one and C is called the third one, if you can see here. But what about B? There is a special name to B as well. What is B called, everyone? B is called the mean proportional. So the middle one is called mean. So here A, B, C and D. This is the first one. This is the fourth one. That was in the previous case. Isn't it, everyone? See here. That was when earlier in the previous case. A, B, C, D. A was called first, D was called fourth. No name for B and C. So let's come back. No name for B and C here. But in continued proportion, A, B, repeat, B, C. What is A called? First. What is C called? Third. What is C called, everyone? Third. And what is B called? Here we have name for B also, mean. B is called a mean proportional. Is that clear? So just remember this. When I say fourth, you understand normal proportional, because fourth proportion only occurs in normal proportion. But when I say third proportional, then by default you have to understand that it has to be a continued proportion. It has to be what, everyone? Continued proportion. Okay, so special names for A, B and C. Now from here, A by B equals to B by C. You can look here. You have A by B equals to B by C. Cross multiply, AC equals to B square, and B will become square root of AC when the square moves to the other side. So finally I have a formula. What is B called? Mean. So mean is the equal to under root first into third when we make a formula. So mean proportional formula will be under root first into third. So that is how we understand proportion. Okay, so by understanding the basics of ratio only, it is possible to understand proportion. Okay, otherwise we won't be able to understand it. So the few sums that you have already solved in ratio, in the next video, once you have understood this theory on proportion, you can repeat it over and over again and watch it. Once you understand this, I will post a video on sums based on proportions.